The original Deadpool made the bold proclamation of including 100 Easter eggs, which made for a real grind of a video. I mean, fun time of a video. This time around, they didn't say 100, but I'd hazard a guess that it's much more than that. Let's say 600. Did I count them? I did not. But let's round up or down, I don't know, and say 600. Bearing in mind, these are going to range from incredibly obscure to blindingly obvious. But you know, if I don't hit everything in that range, then sometimes people get upset, and the last thing I want to do is upset people on YouTube. These though are the topics I'm going to be covering. If there's anything you'd like to skip ahead to, no stress at all, there's time codes in the description. Right, I think a good place to start is callbacks to other films in this X-Men universe. Yes, this movie is somehow connected to those other films, which doesn't make any sense because those films barely fit together as is. I mean, not barely, they flat out don't. When visiting the X-Mansion and taking a spin in Professor X's chair, Deadpool comments that he's never seen other X-Men around, only for us to see Professor X, Beast, Cyclops, and Quicksilver shut themselves away from him. Of course, this makes no sense because they're the younger versions of these characters, not the modern day ones, but I'm assuming these cameos were made possible because X-Men Dark Phoenix would have shot around the time that this movie was made. We also get nods to the older X-Men as Deadpool wears Cerebro and mentions that it smells like Patrick Stewart. We also get him calling Angel Pigeon Wings, though we don't see him at all. Actually, either version of him that are the same age and also the same person, I think, but they also exist decades apart. Look, what do you expect? I told you, the timeline is nonsense. There's a wind-up toy of Logan dying from the movie Logan at the start of the movie Deadpool 2. And in the movie Deadpool 2, during Deadpool's death scene, the same score is playing as when Logan died, called Don't Become What They Make You. We also see Wolverine-branded cereal, which Deadpool signs Ryan Reynolds, as well as a moment where he manages to cut a bullet in half mid-air, only then to be riddled by lots of bullets as a nod to X-Men Origins Terrible. There's also another reference to that film, which we will talk about in the post-credits. In terms of nods to Deadpool 2016, there are a lot, because this is a sequel to that film. Let's say there's 600. But to touch on a few, we get Deadpool again wearing Crocs, Deadpool reciting the speech Colossus gave him about being a hero.
Over a lifetime, there are only 4 or 5 moments that really matter. Moments when you're off.
And we actually see that he was telling the truth about this statement.
There's about 116 kilos of cocaine buried somewhere in the apartment, right next to the cure for blindness. Good luck.
And yeah, the cure for blindness he was talking about seemed to look suspiciously like another bag of cocaine. But who am I to say that cocaine can't cure blindness? I'm not a doctor, but if I was, yeah, I'd say it could, why not? There's also mention of how well this movie did comparatively to Passion of the Christ, which was the previous record holder for an R-rated comedy and or man being beaten and tortured to death for many hours. Deadpool didn't top it domestically in the US, but internationally, it got it beat by something like 150 million, which is incredible. But in terms of references to other media, well, let me tell you, there were so many of that thing. Close to 600, in my estimate. He also says that this sequel is a family film in the vein of Bambi, The Lion King, and Saw 7. Out of those movies, 2 of which I have not seen. And look, if I wanted to watch a cartoon deer get shot, well then I guess I'd just watch Bambi, but I don't want to. It doesn't look good by today's standards. Take that, Walt Disney. And if you don't like it, why didn't you unfreeze yourself and fist fight me, you coward? Dopinder talks a lot about Interview with the Vampire, which I also haven't seen because it looks bad by today's standards. Take that, Tom Cruise. Why don't you stop hiding behind Xenu and fist fight me, you coward? There's also a conversation about Star Wars where Wade says fathers are destined to turn out like their sons, and also that Luke and Leia had sex, which I'm mostly confident that they did not. Mostly. The opening credits are also very reminiscent of a few things, namely a James Bond title sequence, Flashdance, and the Celine Dion power ballad. Seems like something more at home in a film like Titanic, or to a lesser extent, the movie Pearl Harbor. Good film, just kidding, it's no good. Why don't you fist fight me about it, Josh Hartnett? There's also a comparison made to the songs Papa Can You Hear Me and Do You Want to Build a Snowman. Cable's future laser gun goes all the way up to 11, just like we see in Spinal Tap.
What we do is if we need that extra push over the cliff, you know what we do?
Put it up to 11.
11, exactly. 1 louder.
Why don't you just make 10 louder and make 10 be the top number and make that a little louder?
These go to 11.
Yukio is called Pinkie Pie, which is a character from My Little Pony. Colossus steals a line directly from RoboCop and is called out on it.
Come quietly, or there will be trouble.
You stole that from RoboCop.
RoboCop.
Just stand down. You're embarrassing me. Look.
When thrown into prison, Wade wonders which gang the Sorting Hat will put them into. The two guys Cable steals the truck from, one of which is Alan Tudyk from Many Things, and the other is credited as Dickie Greenleaf, which is the name of a character from the talented Mr. Ripley. There's also a lot of the Terminator about Cable. He asks what year it is when he arrives back in time, and is called John Connor. And yeah, he does bear a strong resemblance to the John Connor from Terminator 2. Wade also mentions that he's hit rock bottom like John Candy does during Cool Runnings, and also in The Human Centipede when people decided to sign on to that film. In the opening credits, one of the directors, David Leitch, is credited as one of the men who killed John Wick's dog, which is technically true as he co-directed that film. There's a couple of Goonies references, which Josh Brolin of course starred in. Deadpool calls him One-Eyed Willie, and he's also seen wearing Chunk's shirt in Blind Al's apartment. Cable is also referred to as the time traveler's husband, a nod to the book and or movie. Plus we get a Basic Instinct moment, which I don't really want to elaborate on here because I'd like to keep this video monetized. Yeah, I'm a sellout because, you know, I like money for food and clothes and stuff. Last one here though, Negasonic Teenage Warhead is called 11, like from Stranger Things, even though she doesn't have the shaved head anymore. But whatever, you know, references. This is of course a superhero movie that makes fun of other superhero movies. Really flipping the genre on its head. Deadpool says that he's Batman, like in Batman, when Batman says I'm Batman. What are you? I'm Batman. He also makes a Martha reference unabashedly, like it's 2016. And there's also this line making fun of the dark nature of the DC film slate.
So dark? You sure you're not from the DC universe?
The MCU is of course not safe from having the genre flipped right onto its head. Cable is called Thanos because Josh Brolin also played Thanos in all of the Marvel films, except for the first Avengers film, where he was played by a different Thanos. Yes, I misspoke then. Deadpool says that without superpowers, he's basically Hawkeye. There's a nod towards the Winter Soldier because of Cable's metal arm, and also an observation that a lot of comic book characters have metal arms.
At what point do audiences say, enough with the robotic arms?
Which is especially true if you've read any comic from the 90s. Deadpool tries to calm Juggernaut by using the sun's getting real low line that's seen as a Hulk calming technique. Domino is also called Black Widow, and Dopinder is called Brown Panther. In fact, when you think about it, a lot of Easter eggs in this film is just Deadpool calling people different things from pop culture. It's really easy for them to do that though. He's wearing a mask, so you can just dub over whatever reference you want really. He also performs a superhero landing that is stated as brutal on the knees, if you remember that from the last film.
Superhero landing. Yeah, that's really hard on your knees. Totally impractical. They all do it.
This is of course proven when he does one, and he takes a second or so for the pain to subside. Music plays a big part in the movie Deadpool 2, with at least 600 songs. Here's the list, take a good look. Okay, now it's gone, but we also get mention of George Michael and David Bowie, the latter of which Deadpool believes to still be alive. In the X-Mansion also, Wade is seen wearing a t-shirt with two cats. Those two are actually Olivia and Meredith, who are Taylor Swift's cats. Right, okay, comic books, there's a lot of these, probably about 600. Deadpool popping out of a coffin to assassinate some mob characters is from Deadpool Team Up 898, and he's seen riding a red scooter like in Deadpool 68. Deadpool joining the X-Men is also something that's happened in the comics, and Deadpool refers to the X-Men as a dated metaphor for racism in the 60s, which is pretty spot on. The X-Men have always been a thinly veiled parallel in reference to those persecuted throughout history. Deadpool is also seen having a soft spot for kids, which is something carried over from the books. Cable is pretty much the Cable that we've always seen, with a few alterations. We don't really get a good sense of his powers, but they normally include telekinesis and telepathy. He's also the son of Jean Grey and Scott Summers, but not strictly, as there were clones involved. I'd love to get into it, but I'm not going to because, you know, I'm very busy. Okay, I'm gonna level with you. I don't really recall, but I do remember it being really stupid, so I think I'm just gonna not look into it. There's also a point made that this version of Cable is 5'11", when in the comic books, he's 6'8". It's also very apparent that he's heavily affected by a techno-organic virus like the comics. And also like the comics, it looks like he's barely holding it at bay. But we don't really get the full sense of that in this film. His daughter Hope is also mentioned, and he again carries her bear. In the Institute of Beating Child Mutants to Death, there's posters saying M-Day is coming, in reference to the House of M event, in which Scarlet Witch kills most of the mutants on Earth. Characters new and old are plentiful. Yukio isn't specifically named as such, but she seems very similar to that of the character Surge. Irene Merriweather, the reporter on scene for the Fire Fist incident, is an existing Marvel character, as is Fire Fist, though is quite different from what we've previously seen. Black Tom Cassidy shows up, as does the Juggernaut, like he has once before, but he was played by Vinnie Jones in a rubber muscle suit in a not very good movie. This is a much more comic book accurate version of that character, and it's even hinted at that his brother is that of Professor X, as he wears the helmet to stop him from reading his mind, though more than likely he's actually his half-brother, like they've always been in the comics. Colossus fighting Juggernaut is also a recurring comic book battle across the decades that Colossus often loses. X-Force are introduced and promptly killed. They included Shatterstar, giving us his alien/Mojo World backstory. Vanisher, who's astonishingly played by Brad Pitt, though this time he's invisible and not a teleporter. We get Terry Crews as Bedlam, and Zeitgeist, played by the guy who was Pennywise the Clown, who now plays Guy being chewed up by a wood chipper. He's also had some pretty horrific and similar things happen to him in the comics. Of course, we get Domino, the only member of X-Force to survive. Possibly. Bar one, which we'll get to in the post-credits. When Deadpool gets his suit burnt, it very much resembles his black and grey X-Force suit, minus the red eyes. One of the street signs we see is named Jerry Duggan Parkway, after the Marvel writer Jerry Duggan. Rob Liefeld, the creator of Deadpool, gets a shot fired at him when it's said that he can't draw feet, which is 100% true. I don't know, maybe he's better now. Maybe. I mean, barely. I mean, I can't draw for shit. What am I saying? Deadpool says that he wants to find a planet of lesser beings so he can be their Superman, which sounds suspiciously like Krypton? You ever seen that series? I think it's a Krypton thing. The Icebox prison he and Fire Fist get put into also first appeared in the comics in 1998 and is located in Canada. And Alpha Flight is referenced on the roof of Dopinder's Cab, which is a Canadian superhero team. Also, Deadpool is torn in two like Wolverine was by the Hulk in the Ultimate Comics, and Stan Lee's face is seen in a mural near where Domino lands after skydiving. Okay, post-credits! Right, so Cable's time-traveling device is used by Wade to go back in time to fix the timeline, or at least in his eyes, which involves killing Barakapool from X-Men Origins. He just inserts himself right in there. He also saves Peter from a horrible acid-related death and kills a younger version of Ryan Reynolds upon receiving the script for Green Lantern 2011. But just going back a bit to the killing of Barakapool, I don't think this really fixes the timeline, because if they were the same Wade Wilson, that means he's killed the past version of himself, thus erasing his own future, creating a time paradox. So I guess it's another dimension, or more accurately, it doesn't really matter because, like I said, this timeline is a nightmare of contradictions, recasting, and watching Wolverine screaming in a forest. Right, that about does it. All 600 Easter eggs and references. Count how many I did. I bloody dare ya. If I missed any though, please feel free to leave a comment and maybe even a like for my unparalleled efforts. Also, if you want to check out more things Deadpool, you can subscribe, as there's videos here every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday, like this week's Caravan of Garbage, that takes a look at a story where he travels back in time and inserts himself into an old Spider-Man comic. It's so great. Also, this Monday on my podcast, The Weekly Planet, we're doing a spoiler review of Deadpool 2, the good, the bad, all the other things. That's all linked below, but of course, you can find all of that and more at thegreatplanetbroadcasting.com for all, or at the very least, some of your needs. But thanks for watching this. It's really great that this is somehow my job, and I appreciate all the support. You guys are the best. Take care.